Welcome back to Dylan Bikes and Things. Today, me and my friend James are going to be taking you through 6 tips to get your bike set up just for you. The first thing you're going to want to do is adjust the saddle or seat height. It's really going to affect the way that you ride and how comfortable you are when you're riding. A mistake that a lot of people make when they are adjusting their seat height is they make it a little bit too low, so their knee is too bent at the bottom of the pedal stroke. Ideally, you want your foot at the bottom of the pedal stroke to have an almost straight leg but not fully straight, and that's going to make your pedals most efficient. So now that our seat's the correct height, I'm going to send it over to James for brake lever setup.
Thank you, Dylan. So now we're going to set our brake levers up. It's really important that we get these dialed so that they're perfect for us.
When adjusting your brakes, you're going to want to put the Allen key into the clamp and undo it. So that's going to allow you to move the brake lever along the bar and up and down. If you put the brake lever too steep, it's going to hurt your finger when you pull it. And if you put the brake lever at too shallow an angle, it's going to hurt your arms and wrists when you're trying to hold on. The best bet is to draw an imaginary line down from your forearm to your finger and put the lever along that line as a base level. So if you tighten it up there, making sure that you adhere to manufacturer torque rating so you don't break either your bar or the bolt of the clamp, and then give it a squeeze. For brakes with reach adjust, you can adjust it using an Allen key, or if you've got nice expensive high-end brakes, you can often adjust it using your fingers. So what I like to do is I like to have it adjusted really far out and then wind it in just a little bit, but this is all personal preference, so it all depends on how big your hands are. So if your hands are really big, you might want to have your levers wound all the way out, whereas if your hands are quite small, you'll want to have your levers wound all the way in.
Now we've got our brake levers all set up, it's back to you, Dylan, to set up our gears and dropper post.
Thanks, James. So now that we're up at the handlebars, let's talk about the shifter levers and the dropper post lever setup. So the first thing you're going to want to do is set up your brake levers, of course, because that's your safety, and you're going to want to make sure that those are in the right place and the most comfortable for you. Then you can work your shifter levers around that. You're going to want to decide whether you want your shifter lever on the inside or the outside of the brake lever, because if it's too far in, it's going to get in the way of your hands when your hands are on your grips, and if it's too far out, you're not going to be able to reach it. So then once you decide how far in or out you want it, you could decide what angle you want it at. Now you're going to kind of have to find a middle ground between having it up for when you're standing and having it down and straight for when you're pedaling. So kind of finding that middle ground and practicing and seeing where is most comfortable to use in both positions is going to be your best bet. For the dropper post lever, you're going to do pretty much the same thing that you did for the shifter lever. First decide if you want it inside or outside of the brake lever, and then you're going to decide what angle you want it at. So you don't want it too high to where you can only use it when you're standing and you're kind of reaching for when you're sitting down. And if it's too low when you're standing and you want to drop the post back down, you're not going to be able to reach it because it's going to be under your handlebars. So now that our handlebars are all set up, I'm going to send it back to James for suspension setup.
Thank you, Dylan. So suspension is used to absorb the impacts from the trail. So let's get it dialed in.
First, you're going to want to start with resetting the O-rings on both the rear shock and the front shock. Here you can see the sag markings that we're going to be aiming for. Next, you're going to want to undo the valve caps and the covers on the shock and the fork. You're going to want to put the recommended pressure from the manufacturer. So for RockShox, you can find this out by inputting your fork details into the RockShox Trail app, and there's a similar app for Fox. And here you can see I've just started to stand on the bike to make sure that the suspension sags correctly. So when I get off the bike, I'm going to be looking to see that the O-rings are at the 30% sag mark, which is where I like to have my suspension set up. I'm then going to tune the rebound, so I like quite a fast rebound for all the jibby stuff on the fork and the shock, whereas if you were to ride more repetitive big hits, you'd want a slower rebound so you'd get less bucking.
Now we're all sorted with our suspension, it's back to you, Dylan.
Thanks, James. So under your suspension is your tires, of course. So now we're going to talk about tire pressure. I like to start my rides at about 25 psi and then work up or down from there. That's a good middle ground. And then obviously if it's loose or if it's wet that day, you can lower it down to 23, 20 psi. And if it's really grippy that day, you can go up to 30 psi or even more. When I upgraded my tires from the WTB tires that came with the bike to the Maxxis Ardents that I have now, I was able to run a little higher PSI due to the bigger knobs and the much more traction that I was getting with the new tires. I'm going to send it back to James for one last tip.
Thank you, Dylan. So, let me just show you how to do a few neat bike storage solutions. There's a few little storage solutions that we can do on our bikes to make our lives easier. So first off, I'm going to take this tube that Dylan's been kind and been throwing at me all day, and I'm going to store it on the bike. There's a few places you can store it. One being down here near the bottom bracket, but my personal favourite is here, just underneath the seat tube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a zip tie, put it through the rails of the seat, loop it around, and do it up, and just like that. You might want to put more zip ties on it depending on how secure you feel it is, and just like that. So let's just snip that off like that. We've got a tube stored in our bike for our all-day epic ride that we can't forget and doesn't get in our way in a backpack. So the next little hack like this involves some electrical tape and a chain link. So we're going to come up here to our brake lever, and we're going to put a chain link around our brake lever or brake cable using electrical tape. Now what that's going to do is it's going to mean we're going to forget all about this chain link we've got taped to our bike until the day comes that we actually need it, because we've snapped our chain, and it's going to be under some electrical tape on your brake cable, and it's always going to be there whenever you need it.
So those are 6 tips to get your bike set up just for you. I really want to thank my friend James Pachebat across the pond for helping me with these tips, and I hope you check out his channel. The link is down below in the description. Thank you, and I will see you next time. How should I start this?